and self-described proud feminist to react to some dumb comments made by John Mayer. So let's watch that clip and then discuss if toxic feminism is really a thing.
Singer and guitarist John Mayer is a very talented musician. He's also got some political feelings, which he's sharing with the rest of us. He's unhappy about Brett Kavanaugh's confirmation. So unhappy, in fact, that he interrupted a concert last night to go on a lengthy rant about something called toxic masculinity.
I don't want it to be the male contract. I'm telling you that's the contract, and we have to tear the contract up. You do not possess the universal ability to have any woman that you see. And I'm just going on record as revealing the trauma of men feeling like they've fallen short of a alpha male contract that nobody can live up to. And until we get rid of that in men, we won't have the life that we all deserve.
I'm going on record, says John Mayer, that I'm against men behaving badly. John Mayer has been accused of behaving badly. Maybe this is a preemptive strike against further accusations. We don't know. But there is more evidence he's short women than there is for Brett Kavanaugh. But that doesn't mean his rant was surprising. Harvey Weinstein, you'll remember, was a big defender of women, too. Do we sense a theme here? I think we do. Anushay Hossain is a feminist and a columnist and game enough to join us tonight. Thanks all for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Tucker.
Look, I don't doubt anyone's sincerity, yours or John Mayer's. So I just want to restate, I think John Mayer's a really talented guy. But I remember his song, Your Body is a Wonderland. And in it, he's got this line, one pair of candy lips and your bubblegum tongue. I could go on, but I'm just wondering, is that an example of toxic masculinity right there?
No, it isn't. I mean, it depends on what you think about toxic masculinity. And I actually agree with you, Tucker. I mean, John Mayer, a couple of years ago, I don't think I would have been agreeing with much that he was said. He used to be such a dude, and he said many offensive things. But I think it's a very good example, his recent statements about how men can evolve and change. And by the way, toxic masculinity isn't about saying your body is a wonderland. It's actually about men being violent towards women. And that song was written for his girlfriend at the time.
Everyone is against men being violent toward women, but I wonder if the standard isn't different. If Brett Kavanaugh's calendar from 1982 had, you know, basketball with squee and then your body is a wonderland and your bubblegum tongue, I mean, you would have called for his arrest, right?
Well, yeah, but John Mayer wasn't up for the Supreme Court, right? I mean, you're talking about two different men.
So he wasn't in the way of Democrats assuming political power.
No, it's just a completely different.
I'm looking for a universal
It's not the same thing, Tucker. It's not the same thing at all. One man is a singer, and the other man was up for the United States Supreme Court. And a very serious allegation.
In the way of Democrats.
But a very serious allegation came up against Kavanaugh, and that didn't happen with John Mayer. Has anybody ever accused John Mayer of sexual assault and testified?
And I hope not. And I'm not even attacking John Mayer at all. I just want to know what the standard is. Is that there's such a thing as toxic masculinity, which is men being male? Is there such a thing as
No, that is actually completely wrong. That's not correct at all.
There's no definition. It's just like some made-up dumb feminist term.
No, there isn't.
There's no real definition.
There's actually been studies done on it. It's an academic term, and it's about violence against women.
Now you've further discredited it. But let me ask you this.
No, I haven't actually.
Is there such a thing?
Tucker.
Look it up.
Look it up. We're talking about violence against
Maybe
women.
I'll get right on that.
We're talking about a pop star. Please do.
Look, everybody's against violence against women. Let's be clear about that. I want to know if there's such a thing in the academic. That's what toxic masculinity is about. Okay, that's your definition. Let me ask you, what is the definition of toxic femininity?
I don't think there is a definition of toxic femininity.
There are a ton of women. Oh, there isn't. Oh, there's not. So there are a lot of women in prison for shooting. Well, I have no idea. Actually, you know, I'll be honest with you. I don't think that inherent qualities are ever toxic. I don't think there's such a thing as toxic homosexuality or toxic masculinity or toxic femininity. I think the whole idea is insane. People act in a way that's bad.
But you are not understanding what the definition is, and you're completely confusing two different points. No, you're not.
Well, then you tell me.
Toxic masculinity is not inherent, and not all men are violent and bad. Breaking news, Tucker. Not all men are violent and bad.
That's
and what's so
not actually news to me as a man.
What John Mayer said, what's so controversial about that? He's saying don't feel entitled to women. And we are talking, you know, this is coming on the heels of a really intense time.
Hold on, slow down. Can I ask you a serious question? Okay.
Please do.
It is an intense time, but I think all of us as adults have an obligation to think as clearly as we can.
That's why you shouldn't define toxic masculinity incorrectly.
There's no definition of it, as you know. It's a bunch
There
of ludicrous
is.
low IQ
No,
academics
you're
making it up
saying
as they go
that.
along.
That's not correct,
And you know,
Tucker.
but it is true. But let
No,
me ask
it
you very quickly,
isn't.
why not just say abuse is bad? Toxic masculinity is a quality that is inherent in men. You're attacking an inherent
Masculinity,
quality.
but
You
not
know that
toxic
perfectly well, which is why
masculinity.
you'll not concede that there's such a thing as
you don't
toxic
know what
femininity.
you're talking about.
It's an attack against
Toxic
men.
masculinity
Oh, I
is not
do too
inherent. No, you don't, because you're completely misdefining it. It's incorrect.
Well. Yeah. Okay. I need to read more academic journals, and I will. Anushay
Please
Hossain,
do.
great to see
Or
you.
just do
Thank
a
you.
quick Google search. Thanks.
Okay, so intense debate there, both Tucker and Anushay talking all over each other. I like how Anushay said that John Mayer used to be, quote, such a dude, and then she equates that with being offensive or saying offensive things. Kind of tells you a little about her general attitude towards maleness. She's probably not cool with dudes being dudes, but I'm sure she's very fond of the so-called allies and white knights. But anyway, let's go ahead and dispense with John Mayer real quick, and then I want to talk about feminism in more detail. I don't know what exactly prompted John Mayer to come out and start preaching to his audience about masculinity, but as is the case with many of our celebrities, he really is in no position to be saying much on this subject. He can of course give his opinion all he wants, but he lost his credibility a while ago, even amongst his own celebrity class. So this is from Page 6, which is considered to be one of the more credible sources for celebrity-related news. Don't waste your time there, I'm just going to read you a few lines. The article is entitled, Publicist's Advice to Single Starlets, Don't Date John Mayer, and it's from just a few months ago. I would tell women in Hollywood to steer clear of him, said one celebrity publicist. He's manipulative, he has a reputation, and it's better to exercise caution dealing with anybody who kisses and tells. Alright, so Johnny Boy has a bad habit of spilling dirt on his exes, and this has resulted in him being ostracized by a lot of folks in the entertainment industry. So maybe this rant against alpha males is a bad attempt at getting back into their circle. Either that or he's just an idiot. Last I checked, people pay money for concerts in order to listen to music, not to get lectured on gender, but he can run his show however he wants. Alright, for the rest of this video, I thought we could do kind of an intro to toxic femininity and share some of the different perspectives on it. I'm going to skip over toxic masculinity because I think everyone knows what people mean by it. I think we all agree that violence and oppression of women is never okay, but I agree with Tucker that we don't live in a toxically masculine society, despite what third-wave feminists will tell you. I'm sure we'll have plenty more opportunities in the future to delve into more nuance on this, but for now we'll just do a primer. So Anushay said that there's no such thing as toxic femininity, but you can actually find article after article by feminists and non-feminists alike that give various descriptions of toxic femininity. One of the better examples in my opinion is Machiavellian Mary, explained here in Psychology Today by Dr. Shova Srinivasan. This example is more specific to the workplace, but I think it's just spot on, and so I'm going to read you some passages. Toxic femininity refers to women who are hostile to nurturance and cooperation, opting instead for aggression and backstabbing to get ahead. In this regard, the type of leaders and team builders who are hired is critical to a successful business. Certain personality characteristics are associated typically with leaders who are willing to be risk takers, assertive, fighters, and task-oriented. Nurturant is not a typical descriptor of leaders. It suggests a mothering approach and evokes images of passivity, that is, being a supporter rather than a leader, and being someone who is focused on relationships rather than tasks. Men who hire women to be leaders may not consider nurturers as competent for the role. Therefore, women in business leadership positions may consciously or unconsciously shy away from these and other feminine-centric images. A particularly virulent personality leadership type by a woman is one we label Machiavellian Mary. This style denotes a superficially agreeable, yet ruthless, self-focused, and false individual. Machiavellian Mary is mean business. Her authoritarian style poisons the working environment that could otherwise nourish new ideas. Hers is a top-down communication style, one that promotes a culture of dishonesty and fear. As women professionals, we've witnessed this style. Our female colleagues and friends agree that some of the worst bosses they have had were Machiavellian Marys. Many stories are told of how Machiavellian Mary created friction, pitted coworkers against each other, and promoted dissension and an atmosphere of suspicion and distrust. These accounts reveal how Machiavellian Mary lowered morale, caused employee strife, damaged productivity, contributed to EEO actions and lawsuits, and jeopardized solvency. Alright, so this is one of the forms that toxic femininity can take, at least according to Dr. Srinivasan. And I've witnessed a few Machiavellian Marys in my own work life, so I do think it's a distinct phenomenon in Western business culture, but let's keep going. Here's another description in a Quillette article by Heather Hying, and this is a broader characterization that's more pertinent to relationship dynamics. Sex and gender roles have been formed over hundreds of thousands of years in human evolution, indeed, over hundreds of millions of years in our animal lineage. Aspects of those roles are in rapid flux, but ancient truths still exist. Historical appetites and desires persist. Straight men will look at beautiful women, especially if those women are A, young and hot, and B, actively displaying. Display invites attention. Hotness amplifying femininity puts on a full display, advertising fertility and urgent sexuality. It invites male attention by, for instance, revealing flesh, or by painting on signals of sexual receptivity. This, I would argue, is inviting trouble. No, I did not just say that she was asking for it. I did, however, just say that she was displaying herself, and of course she was going to get looked at. The amplification of hotness is not in and of itself toxic, although personally I don't respect it and never have. Hotness fades, wisdom grows. Wise young women will invest accordingly. Femininity becomes toxic when it cries foul, chastising men for responding to a provocative display. Where we set our boundaries is a question about which reasonable people might disagree, but two bright lines are widely agreed upon. Every woman has the right not to be touched if she does not wish to be, and coercive quid pro quo in which sexual favors are demanded for the possibility of career advancement is unacceptable. But when women doll themselves up in clothes that highlight sexually selected anatomy and put on makeup that hints at an impending orgasm, it is toxic. Yes, toxic to demand that men do not look, do not approach, do not query. Young women have vast sexual power. Everyone who is being honest with themselves knows this. Women in their sexual prime who are anywhere near the beauty norms for their culture have a kind of power that nobody else has. They are also all but certain to lack the wisdom to manage it. Toxic femininity is an abuse of that power, in which hotness is maximized and victim status is then claimed when straight men don't treat them as peers. Creating hunger in men by actively inviting the male gaze and then demanding that men have no such hunger, that is toxic femininity. Subjugating men, emasculating them when they display strength, physical, intellectual, or other, that is toxic femininity. Insisting that men, simply by virtue of being men, are toxic, and then acting surprised as relationships between men and women become more strained, that is toxic femininity. It's a game, the benefits of which go to a few, while the costs are shared by all of us. Alright, so I'm going to stop it there, but overall this is a really interesting and well-written article. I'm going to link it below with the other source material. And I should mention, in case it wasn't clear, that Heather does also acknowledge that toxic masculinity is a thing in the same way that she acknowledges and explains how toxic femininity is a thing. However, her larger point is that most men are not toxic, and for those who are toxic, it's not their maleness that makes them toxic per se. This is more of a definitional or semantic argument, which depends on what you mean by male, but I know what she's intending to mean here, and I agree with her conclusion. Actually, I'm going to read one more line from her article that I think is insightful. The very communities where toxic masculinity is being discussed most are the communities where the men are, in my experience, compassionate, egalitarian, and not at all toxic. Exactly right, and this is the same general pattern for all of the oppression categories, whether we're talking about sexism, racism, whatever the grievance is. The ironic truth is that the folks who are complaining the most about being marginalized or oppressed, they're actually living in the most tolerant, most open, and accepting civilization on the planet and possibly ever. It's never been a better time to be alive. It's never been a better time to be a US citizen, especially if you're a non-white female. So quit complaining and go do something to increase our GDP. It's your civic duty as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, hopefully you found this video to be a good introduction to some of the ideas floating around about toxic masculinity and toxic femininity. As I mentioned before, I expect we'll have many more opportunities to discuss this topic, so make sure you're subscribed and have the notification bell turned on if you're interested in these types of videos. We do rely on viewer support to run this channel, so please consider making a donation by checking out the links in the description. And if you join our pack on Patreon, you can also submit questions for our monthly Q&A videos. The next one will be this Sunday, so be sure to check that out. Alright, see you guys soon.